It's a cold, stormy night just off the coast of Florida in 1622. A Spanish cargo ship full of gold and silver is desperately trying to make its way back to Spain. But as it passes through the Straits of Florida, it sails directly into a hurricane. Its masts are torn apart, its rudder gets ripped off by the waves, and within minutes, the Atocha is brought down. According to records, at least $500 million worth of treasure went down that night, and its location eventually became a complete mystery. But more than 3 centuries later, after sitting at the bottom of the ocean, the motherlode of all treasure was finally discovered, and it proved to be more valuable than ever imagined. We modeled the entire thing to show you how one man and his team of DIY treasure hunters spent decades searching for the ship, and how their genius engineering and an old document eventually led them to the most valuable shipwreck in history. When the Atocha went down that fateful evening, it ended up on a shallow reef in the Florida Keys, a 200-mile stretch of tiny islands. At the time, the location of the ship was known, but just a few weeks later, a second hurricane ripped the ship apart, leaving a trail of debris across the ocean floor. The location of the Atocha seemed to be lost forever, but records of its treasure were never forgotten. According to its cargo manifest, it was holding 150 gold bars, 1,000 silver bars, and more than 50 chests full of coins. All in all, the treasure would be worth at least $500 million today. All someone had to do was find it. That's where American treasure hunter Mel Fisher came in. He had spent his entire life diving, and along with his wife, ran a diving school in California, teaching more than 60,000 people how to dive. With the allure of the Atocha sitting in the Florida Keys, Mel and his family moved across the country in search for its treasure. With little more than a boat and some metal detectors, they began their search in an area called the Matecumbe Keys, which had been mentioned in several documents. But after a year of searching and more than 100,000 miles covered, they hadn't found a single thing. To many, finding the Atocha in this vast expanse of ocean was an impossible task. But Mel had a secret weapon: historian Eugene Lyon. In order to learn more about where the Atocha sank, he went to the Spanish archives in Seville and came across this document. Dated just 4 years after the ship went down, it mentioned that a search had taken place in an area called the Marquesas Keys, which was more than 100 miles from where Mel was searching. Mel and his crew instantly moved their boat and started searching in this new location. But the divers were now searching in deeper water, and they had one huge problem: visibility. Although the water was clear on the surface, at the bottom, the divers could barely see their own hands. And so Mel came up with a genius yet simple solution. He attached 2 large tubes to his boat that could be lowered down in front of the propellers. These would redirect the clear water from the surface and shoot it down to the bottom where the divers were searching. Not only did this clear up the muddy waters perfectly, it had the added benefit of digging a big hole and revealing whatever was buried underneath the sand. Then, one day in 1971, the sand cleared and revealed an enormous anchor. Although it wasn't a piece of treasure, it was their first clue that perhaps the real thing wasn't far away. More artifacts started to show up, like cups, swords, cannonballs, and iron nails used to hold the ship together. To keep track of everything, they started building a map of circles, showing where each piece of treasure had been found. After a while, a clear line started to appear on the map, and they came to the conclusion that the Atocha's motherlode must lie somewhere along this line. Then, while searching near the bottom of the line, a diver came across something really special: an early version of the Opera web browser. Just kidding. Opera now presents its latest evolution of web browsing, Opera R2. With new features like split screening, fully customizable themes, and a whole new tab system, Opera is the most modern browsing experience available. In order to keep track of what you're working on, tab islands automatically group your tabs by context, and they can be expanded or collapsed to save space. And with tab traces, it adds this dark underscore to your most recently visited tabs, so you never get lost in what you're doing. You can even use 2 tabs at the same time, thanks to the split screen feature. Simply drag your tab downwards, and you can compare 2 products. No need for 2 browser windows. You can also control your music without interrupting your browsing thanks to the floating music player. It can even be used outside the browser. With Opera's built-in AI feature, Aria, you can get answers to questions without leaving the page you are working on. Just hit Ctrl+/ to open the Aria command line and start asking questions. Aria can generate images based on a single prompt. It also works the other way around. If you upload images, it can give you more information about it thanks to image recognition. Every aspect of Opera's look and feel is fully customizable, with different sounds, colors, shaders, backgrounds, and themes, like my personal favorite, Aurora. Download Opera today using the link in the description and start experiencing the next generation of browsing. In order to find the Atocha, the crew were following a trail of artifacts that seemed to be leading them to the motherlode of all treasure. But after 2 years of searching the line, the crew had failed to make any valuable discoveries. Mel was running out of money fast, and if he didn't find some treasure soon, he'd have no way of funding the search. But then, in 1973, just a few hundred feet away from the anchor, the crew came across a stash of silver coins and 3 huge silver bars. This find alone was worth well over $100,000, but it wasn't clear if it was from the Atocha or its sister ship, which had also gone down that night. And so they went back to the ship's cargo manifest. Every single piece of gold and silver was recorded in this document, along with their exact weight and serial number. By comparing the engravings on the silver bars to the document, they confirmed that the treasure trail they were following really was from the Atocha. The crew began systematically cleaning the coins using electrolysis and selling them off to make money. Mel and his crew were back in business. With this influx of cash, the crew set out to find more treasure, armed with new sonar detecting technology. But just as they were starting to gain traction, the state of Florida began claiming ownership of all the treasure being found. And so, Mel started fighting back. In the meantime, the crew continued finding more objects on the line, a major find being 9 bronze cannons with Atocha markings engraved into their barrels. But just a day after finding these cannons, one of their boats capsized during the night, killing 3 of the crew, including Mel's son. 3 years went by, and the crew continued looking without finding any new clues. The line had run dry. Throughout the search, Mel had often mentioned a mysterious document he had read, written by one of the Atocha survivors. According to the document, the survivor had helped an admiral smuggle 70 pounds of the world's finest Colombian emeralds onto the ship. It was never clear where Mel had read this, but he was absolutely sure that there was more to the Atocha's treasure than just gold and silver. Meanwhile, after 8 years of legal battles, Mel won against the government and was finally granted the right to 100% of the treasure. But by the end of the 70s, Mel had spent over $6 million looking for the Atocha, and the elusive treasure still hadn't showed up. Every little object along the way had teased the crew, and it still seemed like the treasure had to be lying somewhere along the line. But all that was about to change. In 1983, while on their way out to the line, the crew's magnetometer started lighting up. Divers went down to check, and they came across several metallic objects in a location southeast of the line. By plotting these on the map, a new line started to branch off from the original one. They knew that the ship was ripped apart a month after it sank, so it was possible that the debris was carried on a different path. They followed this new line for a couple of years, and it continued to reveal little bits of treasure. Then, on the 20th of July, 1985, exactly 10 years after the tragic death of the 3 crew members, a large but faint object showed up on their sonar scanner. 2 divers immediately entered the water and began searching for it. On a hunch, Greg Wareham decided to wander off about 100 yards to the east. And there it was. Sitting in front of him was an 80-foot-long shipwreck with piles upon piles of silver bars sitting on top. Off to the side were several chests full of coins and gold bars glinting in the light. There was no doubt that after 16 years of searching, Mel and his crew had finally found the motherlode. Amazingly, hidden within the wreck was a thumb-sized emerald worth over $800,000 alone. Elsewhere in the wreckage, another one popped up, this time worth over $1 million. Eventually, more than 2,000 of the finest uncut emeralds were discovered.